Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from the Govardhan Eco Village, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host, senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to India. Still in India. Last full day we're having here at the Govardhan Eco Village. Tomorrow morning we have graduation. We head off to Mumbai for the Flower Festival, and the adventures continue. We're all feeling a little bittersweet, sad, happy, sad. We had a big kirtan dance-a-thon last night. It was fun. And yeah, got some reflections, Mr. Kaustubha?
Reflections? I don't know if I'm prepared to share reflections at this point. I didn't know you were going to ask me that. But one thing I'll say is this is kind of like what we'll do on our show today is kind of like a continuation in our Profiles on Bhakti series.
Meet the others. We're calling it Meet the Others. Well, I'm calling it that. It's when people from our community, we find them sort of interesting. So we call them up, pick their brain a little, find out their story. And sometimes we hear our own story and their story. That's what I find. I will say that the last 2 days we've had solo shows. And these are two pretty interesting stories. If you missed yesterday's show with Janeshwar, wow, what a story. What a story. Janeshwar, check that out, yesterday's program. And of course, the love story, the tearjerker, it was all there in the soap opera that was Sri Govinda's story. Wow. And we got a lot of feedback traction from both those shows. So check them out if you haven't heard them. Miss Mara, Chef Mara. What's it like, Mara? You had 1 month practically. You didn't have to cook anything.
I don't know. It's really been incredible. It's
Not
so
washing-
nice to be served. To be served,
No-
not have to make any food, not have to wash any dishes.
I thought our whole thing was about being the servant.
That's what I
What
thought
happened
too.
to
But now
let's-
that I've been being served for a month, I kind
Being
of
served is fun
used to
too. Oh,
All right.
my
Some
God.
announcements. We have an asana class with Josh Kane tomorrow morning at 10:30
Love
a.m.
Josh Kane.
And then tomorrow's show will be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time because we'll be traveling to Mumbai. And
Okay.
That's the fact. We're going to do that. Right?
8:30. Yeah,
so
what
that's
time
7
is
p.m. India time for
it?
us.
Okay.
Local.
7 p.m. India time.
8:30 a.m. East Coast time.
Got it.
And then we won't do a show on Saturday because we'll all be at the Flower Fest.
Yeah. All right. Sounds
Right?
good.
Okay.
All right. So, anything else? We got to announce Italy. Italy things happening. Go to wisdomofthesages.com. It's our Wisdom of the Sages Italy retreat. It's awesome. It's fun. It's spiritual. It's deep. It's cultural. We eat well. We dance a lot. Good people. Good times in Italy. If you ever wanted to go to Italy, go with a bunch of cool people. It's more fun.
We also have a Back to Recovery meeting at noon today.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, let's bring on the people. Who we got here first? Let's bring Lalita on. What do you say? Lalita, come on down. Lalita from Oz. Lalita Priya. So, Lalita, you're going to get right in there. You're going to put your face right on that microphone or else it won't pick up anything. Swallow the mic. Sure. And hi, Lolita. Welcome.
Thank
and
you.
you're from Oz, right? Down under.
Down under, that's it. Byron Bay.
Very cool. Spent a lot of time in New York. You did you helped design the renovation of the Bhakti Center, I heard.
Yep, my mum and I. Mum came over for 3 weeks and did it for about 3 months with all the construction builders from New York, and it was an interesting experience.
All right, so we're going to rewind this a little bit because it seems like your entire family's here. Your mom, your dad, your sister. They're all very inspired. Your sister's also initiated. How did you first get into Bhakti? What's your story?
Well, I finished up uni and I was pretty jaded, and I remember thinking, like, why am I so jaded? I've got this beautiful family. I've been well educated. I grew up in Australia on the beach and all good things. And I remember just feeling like, pretty kind of miserable, like that hole that people speak of. And I used to think it would be some great romantic relationship, you know, some guy seeing me for who I really was. And
Yeah, that's gonna
it'll
happen.
be so good just when someone can really, you know, see me for who I truly am. And I think I watched that film, Into the Wild, you know, that one where he just like gives up everything and goes into the wilderness
and dies, right?
and dies. But I chose to ignore
Like in a
that
van,
part.
freezing.
I was like, I like the first part of that story. So I booked a ticket around the world, and I ended up in Paris with my cousin Jess, who actually she's a devotee too. And
What?
yeah, we were
One
okay,
thing.
wait,
So
sorry.
cousin Jess, she was the first devotee in the family, first Bhakti yogi.
I came first, my sister.
Okay, hold it. So we didn't get to that.
Okay.
Yet. Before Jess, how did you discover Bhakti?
Well, this is part of the story. We went traveling together. We found ourselves in Paris one night crying on a bridge over the Seine after their whole apartment had flooded and all these angry French people were chasing after us. Yeah, and we just said,
that's a nightmare, huh?
yeah, it was.
Bunch of angry French people chasing you.
And we just were like, we can't do it like this anymore. So we decided, okay, we're going to give up alcohol. We're going to stop eating meat. We're going to go to India and Nepal and do yoga and meditation and try to find ourselves. We were in our early 20s.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was just in the back of your minds from some movie or.
Yeah,
some
we
book you
thought it was
read.
romantic, you know, we found ourselves.
You're
in
a
like,
young romantic, aren't you?
We were like, we'll be super spiritual and go to these places and, you know, like, but I think there was some genuine I mean, really, we were trying to escape our suffering, really.
Sure.
And we got to Nepal, and that's where I first did kirtan, not with devotees, but just at a yoga ashram. And I remember my heart just cracking open, and it was that kind of happiness that you experience when you're a child. And it's that sort of pure, unadulterated, unobligated kind of joy.
Some people, it's like that. The kirtan's the first thing.
5 potent items of bhakti, and kirtan's one of them. You can't even describe it. Indescribable.
Yeah.
What is that the word? Indescribable? Indespicable?
No,
Indespicable.
I think
That's
just
it.
Stick with that one.
I was despicable.
Almost. Yeah, you can't describe, like, why? Why does that happen? But it happens.
Yeah. And it was like, I couldn't explain it, but I just kept chanting. I traveled all over Turkey, Switzerland.
What were they chanting? Were they chanting Mahamantra there? Or was
No,
it,
it wasn't the Hare
okay,
Krishna. It was
what
just,
was it?
was it Soham something?
Soham.
Om Mata Ganga, you know. So I was in Africa, you know, like a year later, still chanting. But I tried to mix, you know, alcohol and things back in, and it just didn't work. So
Doesn't work.
doesn't work. So when I got home to Australia after a year away, I was really again craving that feeling I'd experienced. And a friend of mine took me to Govinda's restaurant for a meal in Sydney. And I saw
wow.
that they had kirtan every Sunday night downstairs.
Connecting.
Is that in what's it called? A Krellin or Krellin Beach?
No, this is in Sydney in Darlinghurst. Pratapan and Jayashree, Prabhupada disciples, have built up a big community there. They have 2 ashrams, one for men, one for women. And they were doing like about 4 programs a week at that time. So I went along to that Sunday, and that was, I think, the first time I'd actually really heard the Maha Mantra, and that was it. I was like going to film school, and I was more interested in going to Govinda's than I was film school.
It's still just the music, or philosophy was.
I started to go to
Point.
philosophy classes, and that's when I got more entrenched, and that's when my parents had me coming home waving incense and spouting mantras, and they were like, what's going on?
All right, it's time to bring the parents on here. Can we get a parent over here, please?
And while they're coming, I just want to say, I think for Australians, it's very important to avoid alcohol because the beer comes in like this huge can.
It does.
It's not like a
We
normal
like
size
it.
can.
Yeah, they love beer there. To give it up. This is Michelle,
It's my mum, Michelle.
and she's got a bead bag on her hand. Let's hear it for Michelle.
Everybody.
Michelle,
Yes.
your daughter's coming home from this Govinda's restaurant, like waving incense. Has she lost her mind? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking this is extraordinarily unusual for us. And Monique was at the time Monique, not Madhavani, and she was saying to me, Mum, could you tell her to stop doing all this chanting and noise and all this music? And I said, I can't. She's really loving it. And then you dragged Monique along. She eventually went with you to Govinda's and experienced it there. And then eventually I thought, I have to go and see what's happening. What are they doing? Are they in a cult? What is going on here? Because
So you were going over there with skepticism.
yes, I was. Thinking it was lovely, the kirtan, what I was hearing, the singing and the music, I loved that. But I was very nervous about how they were heading with it. And I was, not because I didn't know, because I was ignorant of it. And then
And we had pure devotee syndrome for a little bit.
they did,
Yeah.
they really did, they did.
Right. If in case you don't know, pure devotee is when like you're just get into it and you just feel like I'm a pure devotee now. I'm a pure devotee. All these other people are in total Maya, and I can save them.
Yes.
Including your parents.
And Mum, don't cook that, and Mum, don't touch that. Oh, Mum, you can't do that. So
Throw that
yeah.
out. There's some garlic flakes in it, Mom. I'm not eating your food any longer unless you start chanting and offering it.
Yeah, so I went along after the two girls were both like that, and
We both moved into the ashram.
very
Who?
quickly.
Well, who? What girl?
My
Not you,
sister
okay.
and myself.
And
Wow.
Monique was 20, and I think Lauren, you were 22, going on 23. So and they were both still at uni and starting out. So I went along and I was hooked from the moment I started the kirtan in Govinda's downstairs in the Lotus Room. With the kirtan, I just sat there, and to be honest, I bawled my eyes. That was a beautiful thing I'd
It
heard.
doesn't usually work that way.
Yeah.
No, not with my mom, at least.
Yeah, well, we do come from a spiritual background, so the
Oh, really?
You see, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that?
My mum, who was very dear to all of us, my sister and I, she raised us as Catholics, and as you would know, it was a very devotional for her, and so the power of prayer was never foreign to me.
Mhm.
And spirituality wasn't foreign to me. It was part of our lives already. But I was more of a seeker in looking for something more than the Catholic Church. I had rejected that as a young woman, and I was always seeking something else. So it was a shock that I found it through the girls. I wasn't expecting it. And then for the life of me, I never thought in a million years my husband, Lindsay, sitting over there,
Yeah, we got the husband too in this.
would come on board with it. And my sister came on fairly quickly because she
What?
enjoyed the kirtan.
So now we got five.
Wait, sorry. Now it's 5. What happened to cousin Jess
Yeah, cousin Jess. That's 6.
And cousin Josh.
and cousin Josh?
He came here. We did our yoga teach training at the Eco Village, and he heard Gauranga Prabhu speak. And that night he didn't sleep. He stayed up all night and read the whole Bhagavad Gita in one night, and then
What?
started on the Srimad Bhagavatam the next morning.
Yeah, quite a family.
We are strange.
You know
We're a
what? I
cult within
feel
a
like it's a group of sadhus or an ashram that maybe they died and they took birth again in a similar family,
Honestly, you
and
wouldn't think
its
that.
souls just travel together like that.
If you knew
and,
us behind the scenes, you wouldn't think that. We're a bit of a mess generally.
Raghunath can sense these things. He can tell your past lives.
I can tell your
and-
past. You want past lives? I can help
it's
you.
It's
But it's actually quite fascinating though, because
Only we could do that.
You can. I can teach you. I have friends that can help. Anyway, quite amazing. Let's bring Madhuvani on. Sister Madhuvani, come on down. Okay, switch it out. Thank you, Mother. Madhuvani, you moved into the ashram with your sister. After you were complaining about her mantras, her music, her crystals.
When you came around, what was it? What did it?
What did it? What hooked you?
Well, I think it was, I mean, I was very unhappy at the time, and I think I was a bit irritated with all of her incense waving because I was actually just jealous because she looked really happy. So,
Okay.
and
So good to be able to admit that, you know?
Yeah.
and she was shining. She looked so beautiful as well, like in her new saris, and it was, and then somehow I mean, had been coming to the kirtan for maybe 4 or 6 weeks. She dragged me there, and then one time she said, "Why don't you come to the ashram? Like the people are so lovely, and the food is beautiful, and it's a very beautiful atmosphere and everything." And I was just like, I don't know, but I really didn't want to go at all.
I said the same thing to all my family members, and all of them were like, no. It was just like, no, no, no.
But you came.
But you came.
Yeah, somehow she always manages to drag me out the door and get me to come. So
I think she's like influential in the family. I'm getting that impression.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
She's an influencer. Sort of the same.
I'm just very stubborn, you know. So she's always challenging me to see outside the box. So I somehow like grudgingly came, and I was very rude, and I sat in the corner and I didn't speak to anyone at the ashram. And it was a Bhagavad Gita class. It was they'd been doing regular evenings of Bhagavad Gita, and I was just sitting in the corner, not speaking to anyone, and the speaker was trying to interact with me, to like and try
Right.
and get to know me a bit, or while he was speaking, and I just wasn't having a bar of it. I was just sitting there
Yeah.
like, don't talk to me, like.
I know people like you in class. Yes.
And
I'm like that type of speaker.
yeah. Because I just thought I don't want it to be like some kind of Bible bashing cultish, you know. I was very skeptical. But then I had the Bhagavad Gita in my lap, and I opened it to a random page, and it was Prabhupada was explaining why we're suffering in this material world.
Mm.
And it just, I don't know what happened in that moment, but something just blew my mind. And I think in that page, it ticked off every single thing that I had ever been wondering about and questioning. And I wasn't even listening to the guy who was speaking, but I couldn't believe it. It was, yeah, you tell, yeah.
You know, my wife had a similar thing where she and her sister were traveling around, like trying to find out the meaning of life and all that too. And then she got back and she was totally, it went nowhere. And then somehow her 2 older brothers were devotees, and they gave her one little book. And on the back of it was some Srila Prabhupada saying, and it was just said like, we're all looking for happiness, but we don't know that, forget exactly what it is, but we don't know where to look, or something like that. And she said, just that phrase kind of just entered in very, very deep, you know?
Well, the cool thing about her is we got in the car and I was about to tell her off. I was like, you were being so rude. Like I was going to give her an earful, like, how dare you? She closes the car door and she just looks at me and she goes, it's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth, isn't it? And I'm like, hold on, what? And she's like, it's true. It's all true. This is what I've been looking for.
I say that too.
And then six weeks later, she was on a plane to Vrindavan and she spent 6 months there.
What?
Yeah, with the cows. And she's
That
been
is
there
beautiful.
ever since, on and off.
Where do you live now?
Well, we all kind of moved up to the country in Australia, but I've been in Vrindavan for the last 8 months, just this year. So
Wow.
yeah.
Who are you? Incredible. Should we get the dad in here? Come on, Dad. Let's get the dad. They're all here for the Wisdom of the Sages
Sorry, everyone.
wisdom
it's
training.
A family affair.
Let's get cousin Jody or whatever.
Jess.
Cousin Jess.
Let's get her online if we could.
It's like Uncle Jess. It's like Uncle Jesse from Dukes of Hazzard.
Okay.
This is my dad, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And were you the last to like jump on the boat?
Yeah, I was the last one to jump on the boat. Yeah, I guess that's a bit of a state of fatherhood. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I was. I mean, I liked it, but the repetition of the kirtan just was driving me nuts. But
Yeah. Gets repetitive.
yeah, I mean, but then eventually I had to actually take. Monique didn't have a license, so I was taking in the kirtan, and I couldn't wait outside in the car. So I'd sit up the back of the kirtan, and then one thing leads to another, and you start getting into it, and you start enjoying the actual using your voice, and next thing you know, you're right in the thick of it.
It's amazing. You know what?
Yes,
You know
yes.
you know I'm giving the credit to this for this one?
Alita Priya.
No.
No.
The grandmother. The grandmother praying for you guys. Michelle's mom praying for you guys in your spiritual life. And somehow it's amazing. You guys must have all been traveling souls together.
Well, there's an interesting story. When she died, we were unpacking all her boxes, and it took us days. And at the very last box on the very last day, we opened the bottom of the box was a Penguins classic Bhagavad Gita with this beautiful
There we go.
Radha Krishna.
There we go.
on the front of
The
it.
grandmother.
And it was from the man she could have married. It was either between him or my grandfather. And he'd written in it, he said, "Dear Diane, this
Don't marry him.
holds the secrets to life itself. Find a place to meditate upon." And he quoted all these verses, and he said, "These will transform your life."
Wow. Do you still have it? Do you still have it?
Sorry?
Do you have that book
Yes,
still
we
with all
do.
the verses
We do.
there? Oh, we want to see
do.
that.
So interesting. So interesting.
But the big turning point I want to say as well, like Radhanath Swami had a big impact.
Oh, yeah.
Like really, mum and dad weren't totally convinced. They'd come to kirtan, they'd been enjoying it, but we were brought to India in 2014. Yadabar Prabhu, who did the Hare Krishna film, asked us all to come and meet Maharaj in Mumbai. And we spent some time with Maharaj, and he was very, very, the whole community was super caring, super loving. And that's when I noticed the big shift for mum and dad. Like that's when they, for themselves, not through their daughters, went, I hear truth, I feel it, and this is the path for me, And we got to see dad, dance in a kirtan with all the brahmacharis.
How did you feel when you saw that?
Yeah, that was pretty special, actually. Yeah, I think that was the big one, really. He was, Raghunath Swami really made it, I guess, accessible to all of us, and we really understood exactly what it all meant, and the fact that you could have any question for it, and it would be answered, in a very, I guess, practical way, and not. And when you're in traditional religion, you don't, it's a lot harder, it's a lot harder to navigate the truth for those questions. So I guess that was a big point. Yeah.
Nice. And now, did the podcast play any role?
Do we kick us down something here? Throw us a
I
bone.
have to tell, they are so cute. This, like, when you guys started the podcast,
We're cute.
you're all cute.
Is one of us cuter? Is one of us
You're all
cuter?
cute.
That's what-
But like when the podcast started, mum and dad were at home every night with their big screen TV. You guys were on it.
What time does it come on there?
It comes on in the
They're
evening.
watching live or
Oh, yeah, no,
Not
you
live.
usually they're the others, but
on YouTube?
they don't miss a day. They watch it every day, and it's really, that's also been a big transfer. Like we've witnessed, just like, they're so cute. I say they're cute because like I come home sometimes and they're in bed reading the Gita to each other together in bed.
That is pretty cute.
I'm giving all the family
Okay, so
secrets
but I
away
just
now.
want to clarify. This is not me and Kaustubha reading the Gita together. We're not the cute ones reading the Gita together
they
in
love you
bed.
guys. They're
This is
always,
her mom and dad. Just clarifying
they
that.
feel like, you feel like you know them.
Oh, absolutely. It's so funny when you see somebody in your living room. It just creates, an aura as well, and the two of you really feel like you're part of it. You really feel like you're part of all your lives, and it's a really nice thing. We kind of think, oh yeah, do you think Kaustubha's all right? Do you think Raghunath's okay? And it's just, you really do feel like you're really involved.
They say prayers for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
subsist on your prayers.
do.
Yeah. I say a lot of prayers actually for a lot of different people.
Wow.
Wow. I keep my life extra dramatic just to keep the ratings high.
And to keep the prayers going. But I want to say that Lilith Priya is like, she came into the Bhakti Center, into a project that I had been involved in years. And she just so talented in so many ways, you know, like, first of all, she worked with Yadubar on that film. And, you know, it's such a beautiful film. People that we showed it here before you came, I believe. But everyone was so appreciative, right? Everybody that saw that film, such a beautiful film. And you were doing film in the Bhakti Center and producing like such high level stuff. And then they had like this project going on where they had to like renovate the entire second floor, and they tried to get it started and they weren't getting anywhere. And then like in desperation, they turned to you, and you just pulled the whole thing together, and really just absolutely beautifully done. You know, like everything you touch, you make it really beautiful. Really, you're super talented, done with devotion. You know, I think you become empowered because of your devotion. Serious. I mean that entirely honestly. Thank you.
I mean, I feel like I've been privileged to be given service that's in my nature. And I feel like not a lot of devotees in the movement, you know, often get to experience that. And that's just, you know, pure mercy, like someone seeing something in me. And like, I mean, when I did the Hare Krishna film, I didn't know much about Prabhupada, and it was just someone going, God in, you know, encouraging me, because honestly, I think I made so many offenses. You know, like you just don't know when you're young, but it's like, that's what I love about Wisdom of the Sages in this community, is because it's really starting to provide opportunities for devotees and people coming to really be authentically themselves and do what's in their nature and encouraged in their nature. Like, don't try to fit into a mold. You got to be yourself. That's the only way forward. And for me, like, I'm grateful for that. I got those opportunities. So I hope more people do.
Thank you so much. Let's hear it for the family, Harry Ball. Now, I really want to say it. You know, that was one of my theorems, postulates from last week. Is like you need a partner, you know, a supporting partner, right? You need a teacher or a community or some elders in the community, and you need a contribution. You know, you need something that you feel like this is what I'm good at. It saved me. I think I floundered around in ashram for a couple of years, sort of like directionless. But then, you know, I started doing shelter, and I tell you, I could really sink my teeth into it. It was my nature to communicate, to write punk rock songs, and just to Christianize that music. And I felt like I could do this forever. You know what I mean? I felt like very happily engaged in that, and there was no sweat for me to follow principles and live like that austere life if I got to do what I'm good at. So yeah, it's important to take what you're good at and use it in a spiritual way. And it was beautiful examples. And then of course, like a rock dropping in a very placid pond, it creates ripple effects everywhere.
Definitely created ripple effects in the family.
Yeah.
She's also getting a lot of love as one of our sage group leaders too. Yeah, more ripple effects.
She's a sage group leader, Harry Ball. Let's bring down Cindy Lunsford from Nashville, Tennessee. We call her Yogeshwari. Now, Cindy, welcome.
Thank you.
She's been on the show. You got to speak right into that microphone like this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Cindy, one of our teachers on our 300-hour training. We do retreats together. I've been to Mexico, leading retreats with her. She's a big influencer of sorts, especially in the South, upstate New York, where she had many studios. At one point, she teaches hot yoga, but she got the bhakti bug, and now it's hot bhakti. Now, I'm just going to rewind your life a little bit. You were a lawyer by trade.
I mean, for about 3 years. So I went to school, and then I did it for 3 years, and I hated it. And then I went into.
You know, I know a lot of lawyers who hate being lawyers, and they quit immediately.
No, they can't. That's the problem. They get stuck. But I came out without any loans, so I was able to transition. You know, but I walked into a courtroom. It was where the lawyers sit one day, and I looked around the table and everyone just looked so miserable. And it just, the next day I said to my now ex, but I said, I am going to give my 2 weeks notice and I'm going to go do this yoga training. I didn't even do yoga at the time.
You're one of those people who did a yoga training, but you've never done
I had
yoga.
done like a little bit here and there, but they didn't have it in upstate New York. I mean, I hadn't heard of like Yoga Mandali and stuff at that point.
You did Bikram yoga
I went to
in Mexico or something?
9-week training in Acapulco.
Acapulco. And that's where you met a first devotee, correct?
Yeah, my one and only out of 370 people. I really had to isolate myself to learn this dialogue. So I had one friend and she is from Canada and she was not a devotee at the time, but at that training, Joel Peer, he recently left his body at the Philadelphia temple.
Yeah, he was a Prabhupada disciple.
Yeah.
And he had a hot yoga studio in Philly. And he was
Yeah.
a big influential person too.
Yeah.
I'm realizing this after he left his body, how many people
yeah,
he
was
gave shelter
amazing
to.
because he just really liked the series, even though he would teach in wool socks, wears bead bag, and he just stood out. And he befriended us, and we had a conversation. I think one day, and he gave each of us a Bhagavad Gita. And I think I've told this on here before, just briefly, but I didn't take interest in it, but I didn't let go of the book. I put it on my shelf. It was there. I looked at it. I saw it.
I got a bunch of those books.
Yeah.
just books on my shelf that I may or may not read.
She went deep down that path, and we stayed very close. And years later, when I was very heavy into asana owning studios and kind of stuck in that place, where the asana was all consuming for my life. And now I see the error of those ways. But it was also my business and my professional life. But she came and lived with me for a few months and started feeding me the philosophy. And at first I was really resistant. I felt like, what are you doing coming in here telling me how to live my life? About probably a week in, I relented and I started listening, and she left and I just started consuming the books. And so I've always felt since that time a deep connection with Prabhupada, just because I have no association most of the time. And I've just little by little, I've tried to stay in touch with you. And from that, this has given me so many more opportunities. But yeah, I think that honestly was my first encounter. And I look back at that and think, you guys, I think, kind of say you call this into your life a little bit, but I just weirdly had a lot of devotees come on my path. And so I don't take it lightly at all, especially because I really believe everything that I read, just like they were saying, you read it and you're like, this is all true. As soon as I read some of his stuff, it was like all the doubts and suspicions I had were answered, So that was,
I guess there's that "this is all true" moment that people have. Okay, it's all true.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I know, and me being there and within that community of yoga asanas, you can really get lost in that. It's sort of like where can I take my body next? And it gets exciting. And of course, it's our professions and things like that. But, after spending time in India and reading deep philosophical thoughts and ideas beyond Iyengar light on yoga, it's sort of like, wait a second, this is just a condiment to a much greater meal. And it's this personal transformation of our mind and our consciousness that's the meal. And if I stop with my asanas, it's just like a very low ceiling of where I can go with all this transformation.
And then your body starts breaking down, and then you realize like, I can't go any further. And your ego does get caught up in it. I mean, I can attest to that for sure. So, I still do it as a profession. I still love it, but I really try to change my consciousness. I'm super aware of when my ego is showing up and when I'm showing up to just, do something that I really love, and it becomes for me an expression. Some people are creatives. I don't have that. So it's, for me, my body has been that, but also like learning to navigate getting older and still being healthy. And also it's, it is my connection to association. It's how I meet people. It's how I get to work with you. And so it's really important to me that I maintain that, because I don't want to, now I don't, I lose the handstand. I'm already starting to lose it, but I can't lose this. and that's
Oh.
the part that, I struggle with now. It's like to maintain so that I can continue to create association.
We're doomed to lose a handstand. It's going to go one of these days, but the heart will never get taken away unless we choose to let it go.
Beautiful.
And I don't think you're going to. What's your lifeline in Bhakti? What's your go-to? Is
Where
it
do I-
kirtan, or is it japa? Is it
I
reading,
love,
or is it?
as you know, I love the communal aspect of kirtan. I love the sort of hearing one voice and thinking you sound really good. But I never want to be the voice or the the leader in that regard. That's not my comfort zone. But I love japa. I because of the asana, I like austerities. I like tapasya. I like kind of the challenge and the discipline of
Mm.
this practice. But I also know I can get caught up in that too. So I try really hard to find the balance. That's why coming here is so great, because I get regular kirtan. But I love the philosophy. I love reading it. I love studying it. Yeah.
So thoughtful, just
It's
kind of-
deep. It's interesting how you could tell in a previous life she was attracted to tapasya, to like renunciation and cutting things off, and then Bhakti somehow has penetrated that heart, and even though she's drawn to it, she understands, like, yeah, Bhakti, this is the real thing. Anyway, it's a beautiful marriage between both of them, being renounced of things
Yeah.
and using things in Krishna's service. And this is the first year you came on board. She came for the Sangha 1 year, and now this is the first year she's doing this with us here at the 300 hour, and we're looking forward to next year, Prabhu.
Me too. I'm so grateful for you guys.
So-
I mean, for this whole community. It's really incredible.
What a
So,
month!
yeah, I know. I'm like Kaustubha. I gotta process it when I get home, because right now it's just like,
Yeah,
awesome.
it's what happens. It's like you don't even realize how high you are until you get shot
get
back into the
whoa.
material world, and you're like, what just happened to me? We're all about to experience that. What just happened?
Yeah.
It's at very high level, no downtime, high vibe, lots of chanting, lots of japa meditation, lots of satsangs, lots of prasad, and then great association, and then all of a sudden,
Driving your
Where
kids to
am I?
school and,
Driving
doing
kids to
the
school.
mundane stuff, but hoping that you can take, I mean, I come to things like this retreats and to really reflect on what I can take back. And that's work. That's really, for me, that's the work.
And I'd say it's one of the reasons why we did the podcast in the first place, is that if you have a high experience from one of these immersive experiences, what do you do next? And we have the podcast so people could just check in with it on a regular basis. Just like I see Cody right now on Zoom. She just left here after a couple weeks here, and she's just like, that bug is reignited. So this is what we need to do on a regular basis. I do it myself. I read regularly. I do my own personal worship. I do my own personal mantras. But I need to check in. I need to check in with groups of devotees that inspire me, to bring me higher, to keep my own consciousness higher. I need to be lifted. And then I need to lift other people at the same time. That beautiful balance of reaching higher and pulling people up with you. It's a wonderful combo.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Cindy.
thank you all so
Yogeshwari,
much.
Haribo. Keep up the good work. 2024, we're going to do this. She's nice, isn't she?
Wonderful.
Wonderful lady. All right. Continuing on. We have the famous Brother Nature here. Miguel, come on down.
This is Zoomer.
Brother Nature's a regular Zoomer, Miguel. As a matter of fact,
West Coast Zoomer.
you know what? Let's pick this guy's brain right now. How are you? So what's your story, Miguel?
Man.
You joined a long time ago. I remember Brother Nature coming up on the Zoom screen.
Yeah, about episode 250, I think. Like,
Okay, you're 250.
About-
You're a 250er.
About 250.
700 episodes ago.
700 episodes in, it's still going strong. Time is a little tricky because out west, trying to get out of bed at 2 o'clock.
No
in the morning.
apologies, Californian.
Was that when you were in Atlanta, or was
No,
that
that was
you're from all the way from the
all
West
the way
Coast?
from the West Coast, yeah.
Maybe on the weekends.
Maybe
you're
on the
tuning in
weekends,
more.
yeah. I was
Okay.
much more regular.
A little
yeah.
later.
So what's your story? How'd you get
Man,
here?
From Peru.
Where to begin? I've always been attracted to devotional music. I grew up Catholic. I grew up in Peru, but moved to the States when I was 14. I've been there ever since. Um, for some reason, I never actually connected with the teachings, but I did felt something every time I stepped into a church and I started singing. So that's
Me too. Me
let's
too.
put a pin on that because I want to get back to it.
Me too. Pin on that for me.
Let's put a pin on that.
Go ahead, pin me there too.
Excellent. So fast forward to 2020. I'm not speaking for myself here, but everybody had a rough year. Being in isolation, being away from family, friends, did take a toll on my personal life. I experienced the suicide of a close cousin of mine. I experienced a couple of COVID deaths in the family. And we come from a background where everything is done as a community. Like we're all family and that is our support system. And unfortunately, because of the distance, we couldn't get together. We couldn't grieve as well as we could have. And that really brought me down. I put a lot of pressure on myself to be the rock that my family wanted me to be able to support them, but I couldn't. I didn't have anything to pull strength from because I was just emotionally empty. And through that process, I fell into the hands of alcohol abuse and drug abuse, which took me into a downward spiral to a point in my life where I'm not very proud of, but I'm thankful that it actually happened. Sure, I'll share a little more. My wife sat me down and said, "Hey, if you don't fix this, figure out a way, things are not going to be pretty." And something spoke to me, and it's so difficult to understand, to articulate, but I stopped immediately out of love because she is my best friend. She's the person that I married. And if she's struggling with something and I can help it, by all means, I'm going to do something about it.
Wow.
Beyond that, as I was removing things out of my life, bad association, drugs, alcohol, I didn't want to take on other things to fill the things that I was, unearthing. So I left a little bit of a space there. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I just left it as it was. Fast forward to April of 2021, when I started listening to the podcast, and we talk about Christian miracles a lot. It was through a Christian miracle that I came in contact with the yoga club at the University of Washington, which helped me, very closely, welcomed me with open arms. I didn't really know what I was getting into.
What's the yoga club?
So my understanding was, hey, we're gonna get together and practice asana, do some sort of community events, those types of things.
But it was a different.
But it was
a different yoga
It
club.
was a completely different thing. So they held meetings on Zoom for some reason. I was like, okay, well, we could be doing yoga outside. April, the weather is kind of turning in Seattle, so we have some dry days, so we could be hanging out outside.
Bhakti yoga club.
But that was not the case. It was a Zoom call to discuss Bhagavad Gita, and in that meeting, people started opening up, like sharing their vulnerabilities, their struggles, and that spoke to me in volumes. How do people find that space in their heart, that courage to be able to share things that they're struggling with, beyond a superficial, to the personal level, to the core? And that really resonated with me. At some point in time, in between my cousin's death that happened in 2020 and, listening to that Zoom call, I had started listening to Be Here Now, to the Ramdas podcast.
Yeah.
So those teachings resonated with
The
me.
one that's right in front of us.
Yeah, they're the one that's number
Yeah,
one. We're
sorry.
number two. Yeah,
Sorry,
we're gonna take those guys down. I know it's not about competition, but we're gonna crush them.
Hey, well, you're gonna love this one. So after listening to that, I stumbled upon the Ritual podcast, your episode, Raghu,
Ritual,
which made a bigger impact. If that makes you feel any better.
I'm convinced he's a very good communicator.
He's an excellent communicator.
Ramdas?
Yeah.
He must, obviously, yeah.
Well, both of them. Raghu Marcus, that used to lead the Ramdas podcast, and Ritual himself on the Ritual podcast. Great interviewer. Really got down to the core, to the nitty gritty, and I believe you had an opportunity to discuss your 6 pillars. And at that point in time, I was like, maybe this is the thing that I've been waiting for. Got into the Zoom call, started connecting the dots. And I remember I was on an 8-hour drive from Seattle to Boise. I was going there for work. And I just had to pull over to the side and started crying. because I felt like this was the thing. I immediately stopped.
This is
What
the podcast
this
now
is
you're talking
this no
about, or
this is
this
the Zoom call. This is the Zoom call
Zoom call, the
with
the yoga
with the
group.
yoga
Okay.
club. Yes. I pulled the car over and I looked on my phone. I was like, okay, episode 1, learning to surf. You guys remember that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Play that. I had 7 hours in front of me, so I binge listened for 7 hours to your guys' podcast, and
Wow.
that's when I got hooked, and I have not looked back ever since. Through the yoga club in Washington, we had our first satsang in person at a devotee's house right across from the ISKCON temple in Seattle. Little did I know, the satsang also involved getting actually into the temple. I was completely unaware of that. I was just showing up for some food and for, great association of like-minded folks. And I was like, okay, well, this is different. Let's go in there. And as soon as I stepped to the temple, I kid you not, my heart started pounding. I'm walking towards the stairs and there's something inside of me that says, come closer, come closer, come closer. I get into the doors of the main temple. I just fall to the ground and started crying. Because at that point, I truly felt it. We often talk about how bhakti is something that is purely experiential. There are no words for me to articulate to you or to anybody here or to anybody listening what I felt. It's just something that you have to experience yourself to be able to believe it. And at that point in time, my life completely turned around, and now I'm here.
Amazing.
What a story.
Yeah.
McGill, unbelievable. And you just keep moving forward. What's next on your agenda?
Finishing the Light on Wisdom training. It's been incredibly beneficial. Shout out to you, both of you, the program leaders, everybody that's teaching here, to the great association of folks. It's been incredibly rewarding. I mentioned this to Kaustubha yesterday. When I purchased my ticket and when I signed up for the training, I didn't know what I was looking for. I really wanted a break from day-to-day life. I wanted some sort of recalibration method. And things started getting getting real once I got on the plane and say, okay, well, what is my why? Why is it that I'm going? And selfishly speaking, I was like, well, I want to deepen my practice and I want to be able to do these things and all these other things to be able to, get to the next level and all this and yada, yada, yada. But the more time I spend with the devotees, the more time I spend in great association, the more time I spend listening to your guys' teachings, the less it's becoming about me and the more it's becoming about how is it that I can use my practice and what I'm learning in service of others.
Whew.
Right? And I really hope the story that I'm sharing today and the chats that I've had with folks here, it's actually helping. Personally speaking, there are a lot of things about my cousin's suicide that could have been avoided if we would have just paid attention. We don't give ourselves enough of an outlet to be able to speak out of our issues, of the things that are going through our minds and hearts. And it's environments like this in full, transparency, opening our hearts up and being extremely vulnerable that is conducive to those types of things. And I can't imagine me going back to Seattle being the same person. It's just elevating the performance to a completely different level. And for that, I am incredibly grateful.
What a wonderful person.
Wow, what a Harry Ball. So well spoken, huh? Thank you, Brother Nature. Appreciate you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Happy you're here. That was great. Hey, do we have time for Chef Paul to come on? Yeah, come on. Chef Paul. Sure. Come on. Chef Paul, come on, bring him down. Let's wind this up with Chef Paul. Chef Paul, it's Meet the Others Day. Meet the people, listen to the podcast. You don't really get to know him. I met Chef Paul at Super Soul Farm.
Yeah.
Showed up for a retreat, and he's got like a real New York attitude, and in a wonderful way. In a wonderful way. We're all New Yorkers. We can appreciate it. Yeah. Maybe the rest of the world can't, but we love you.
But we don't care.
We don't care because we're New Yorkers.
Yeah.
So you're a chef. You're working on a TV show for your cooking show right now?
Yeah, I worked on a TV show for a few years. I was working with Anthony Bourdain. We pitched a show for a while, and then, we know what happened to him. And I had laid off for a little while. I said, I'm gonna there's only one business that's crazier than the music business or the restaurant business, and that's the TV business. So I went back to the restaurant business, and I just was sticking with my day job. And then when the pandemic hit, I got into a really dark spot, and it really made me think about what had happened to Tony and how his life was. And everybody assumed that he had like the best life, and kind of like what Miguel was saying, nobody knew. And it really made me look at what was happening with my life and how I was getting dark. And I woke up one morning and I said, I don't want to wind up like Bourdain. And I was already, I got clean 15 years ago. So I was already on a spiritual path. But
you got clean through a 12-step program
yeah, I was fortunate enough to have a white light experience. Like I had been in and out of rehabs and, my whole life. I started using when I was a kid. And, while you were doing the straight edge thing in downtown, I was, hanging out with guys like Johnny Thunders and Dee Dee. We were not straight edge.
Another part of the punks.
Yeah.
A different side of that punk planet.
Yeah. Same corner, just, a different view. And I just started, I came up with the idea to do a podcast. I just wanted to reach out to different people and find out what they were doing to maintain their spiritual life and to stay sane. And a lot of people that I talked to, unfortunately, close friends of mine, they weren't doing anything, or they didn't have any sort of connection. And one of my friends, Seth, who was in the hardcore scene, he really changed it for me when I said to him, what are you doing to stay sane? And he said, bro, I don't do that crunchy granola stuff that you do, and it made me realize like we really need it. And somebody has to, like we all have to go out there and reach out to whoever we can, whenever we can, however we can to make this happen and to get people connected.
What made you come up to Super Soul that day?
Well, I had been following you guys and listening to the podcast, and I knew of your career, and I found everything that you were doing very inspiring, and I wanted to meet you. And when I was putting together episodes for my pitch for the show, which is now called Hungry for More, I wrote you into it. I don't know if I've told you that yet, but you're going to be on it.
This is my chance.
And my partner on the show, the director, he was like, do you know this guy? And I said, no, I've never met him. And he was like, well, why don't you like email him or something? I said, that's kind of cheesy. I'm not just going to send him an email. And I looked on your website and I saw that you were having the retreat. So I went up there, and then I met Raghunath Swami that weekend and got to ask him a question. And I didn't even know who he was. And it changed my life. It was amazing.
It's the potency of great souls, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the point I meant when I said my wife read just that one line. I mean, someone else might have said, but like there's a potency in devotees when they speak, and it sounds like another example of that.
The potency with him was like nothing I have ever experienced. So like in shooting the pilot for my show and going around and shooting the sizzle reel, we did a lot of different things. I talked to a lot of swamis, I talked to rabbis, I talked to a lot of different spiritual people. The whole idea for the show is that I go around and do a lot of different things to see what people are doing in different forms of wellness and spirituality. I have never, ever met anyone in my entire life that when he looked at me, I could feel the blessing. I could feel the mercy. And
he's got that, doesn't he?
I couldn't stop thinking about it from that moment on. And then I called you when I saw this was happening. And I said, I've been thinking about him and I just wanted to see him. I wanted to see him. And I had to see him again. And then when I got here, it was the first day I was here. I sat in the forest meditating, and I kept thinking, I really want to talk to him. And then I was just standing outside, and he came walking by.
I want to just like interrupt here. Maharaj barely, he had COVID when he first got here, so we didn't see him. He was in isolation. Then there was a small window of time where he was just like busy, so we didn't get that much time with them. And then Paul was meditating, and it's as if he came out of where, like a magician, just appeared here, like a mystic. And then you had some incredibly quality time one-on-one with him.
Yeah, he sat and talked to me for like over a half an hour. And he even said, he was like, I wanted to just go out and walk and think by myself. I didn't really want to talk to anybody. And he was kind enough to sit with me and and talk, just me and him. And you know, and I got a hug from him, which, you know, like I'm like shaking, like thinking about it. You know, it was absolutely amazing, beautiful.
You know, Paul's like a leader. He's well spoken. People look up to him, and you know, he's a character. You know, and because in a wonderful way.
Thank you.
But it's sort of like to the degree that we add, I find this in my own life. To the degree that I add bhakti to my life, whatever I'm going to put out in the world can have a great effect, a horrible effect, or a transcendental effect. And so I feel like with you, to the degree you add bhakti like that, the splash you leave in this world will be so great, and that ripple effect will be so massive. I'm excited for you. I'm super happy you came here.
I'm so happy I came here, and all the, you know, you call it light on wisdom. I mean, the wisdom, the knowledge that you have shared with me has really changed me and my perspective on everything. So I'm eternally grateful.
Let's hear it for Chef Paul, everybody. Boom. All right, Kaustubha, that's a wrap. You know, I really wanted to, again, express those beautiful interviews yesterday with Sri Govinda and Janeshwar the last 2 days. You know what I realized those two guys are? Even though he was sort of like dentist turned, you know, yoga guy turned like runs an ashram now, he was like a total rebel. Sri Govinda was like a total punk rock rebel in his own way. Janeshwar was living in the slums of Bombay, but a total punk rock rebel. He did what we did. They both did exactly what we did in their own way.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my realization. I thought you were gonna.
Thank you.
I thought you were gonna be like, yeah. I thought they were gonna say, yeah.
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 I'm into it. That's a great realization. Thank you.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for everybody live. We've got a great live crew. We're about to go to the last final closing kirtan of our training. Now it's in the next 20 minutes or so. Oh my gosh! Tomorrow's another time. It's gonna be.
It'll be what time, Mara?
Mara?
8:30 a.m.
8:30 Eastern time.
Eastern time.
So hopefully you guys are following us around. Keep track of these times. Zoom people, thanks for being here. Others, thanks for everything. Zoom checking in. Everyone who supports us, we're incredibly grateful. We couldn't do it without you. Go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. Everything is really appreciated. Check out the Italy retreat. It's going to be awesome. We also got some retreats going to go on this year at Super Soul Farm. Keep posted. Thank you, people. It's a beautiful day for a beautiful day. Let the magic flow.